Oh. Hi, I'm AJ Johnson, the education specialist at Training Peaks, and I am joined today by Skylar Trujillo and Rotem Ishai, and these guys are members of the Boo-Bikes Training Peaks Cyclocross team. They've driven all the way up from Durango, Colorado. They're going to be racing in Fort Collins this weekend. They've been nice enough to join us here at Training Peaks. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Oh, for sure. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So first question I want to ask is, obviously, cross has grown a lot in the past few years. USA Cycling is saying now there's over 100,000 racers that participate in a cross race sometime during the season. If you could put it into words, just what makes cross so awesome?
On our drive up, he was actually just talking about this, so I think that's perfect for what's going on.
We're talking about, we've been racing mountain bikes for many years now. I've been racing over like 12 years mountain biking, and racing cross is just a whole festival. The actual racing of cyclocross, I feel it's the best event ever for not only the racers but the competitors, and it's kind of like a whole event that everybody wants to be when it's cold, but nobody, like some people don't like to get out of the house, but when people do, it's a cross race, it's always fun. Compared to mountain biking, where it's really awesome for the riders, the racers, but then you don't really get to see them for the spectators. Right. And you as a racer also don't get to see lots of spectators because you're just out in the woods. So it feels like sometimes you're kind of like chasing yourself around.
So it's as much fun for the spectators as it is for the racers. So how many people do you know like come out to the races and they say, yeah, I'm going to race, but I'm more interested in watching my friends and going along with that festival atmosphere? I mean, do you guys stick around and watch all the other races and be a part of it, right?
Yeah, for an example, last week in the Boulder Cups, I've traveled along with the Fort Lewis college team, and we've stayed in and cheered them throughout the races. I mean, we had races going on all day long, and we stayed and cheered for them and helped them out as well. So it's a full day thing, and you can be a racer and a spectator on the same day. So it's pretty cool.
So for people that maybe aren't so familiar with cross, how do you think maybe would be the best way for someone to go about getting into their first race? Because you do have to have some specialized equipment in order to race, but it's really a very low entry, a barrier of entry for the sport. So how would someone go about just getting involved in it?
So I think we're on the verge of really kind of like a new era, and I will explain why. Because nowadays you would have to pick between a road bike and a cross bike.
Yeah.
And you can see today in the last few years, there's been a transition, especially with the disc wheels on road bikes, where you can actually take a cross bike or a road bike and switch the wheels and have both of them. Yeah. The Boo bikes, we actually make a bike that you can, just by switching your wheel set, you can, going hard on a Tuesday Worlds night ride on the road bike, and then the next day you can do a cross practice and on the same bike, so you don't really have to choose. Where that I think was the problem for people to getting into the sport, because lots of people are on the road, but then they're going to have an additional cross bike.
Yeah, it's a whole other setup. So, yeah. And you've probably already have a mountain bike, and now you're saying, okay, I need to add a third bike to the quiver, which usually the racers don't mind. It's usually the significant other that's a little bit upset about the expenditure and loss of garage space and whatnot. So
right.
Now, Rotem, you mentioned you came from mountain biking. Did you also come from mountain biking?
Yeah, I definitely started in mountain biking, and I raced mountain bike for 1 year and then went and did my first year as a cross, and that was when I was 13, so pretty young. And I've been done it every winter since. Couldn't get away from it again.
And back then it probably wasn't as popular. So have you noticed the growth? I mean,
I've noticed the growth. I think a lot of it has been like just the raw amount of people that have been able to get the bike and like heard about the races and like come out and done a race. But you do a race and then you hang out and you spectate too, and it's a full day event for sure, and that's what makes it so much fun for anybody.
So on the training side then, how much time are you guys spending actually on the cross bike, and how much crossover is there for your training?
How much time a week?
Or just in general, like how do you start a season out? So coming into a cross season, are you specifically on the cross bike, or do you spend most of the summer on the mountain bike? What does it look like for you seasonal?
Well, living in Durango, and where people usually get their base miles on the cross bike during the beginning of fall, I usually typically stay on my mountain bike as long as possible, because I want, that's the best time in Durango to ride the high country trail. Yeah. So it's like such a nice day out, and I can go for a long 4 or 5 hour mountain bike ride at 10,000 feet, and rip some trails that I can't do during the winter or even during the early spring. So I try to stay on my mountain bike for a long time until I actually, transfer to be more cross specific in training. But I feel like, I mean, training for mountain bike races, especially cross country these days, where the courses are shorter, not only in length but also in time of the race, and cyclocross, it's physiologically, it's almost identical. I think, I mean, the energy system you're using and pretty much the race length and everything and the intensities are almost identical. And I think it's more about just kind of like just focusing your mind about cross intensity, just being there where it's just like always surging always. And then on mountain biking, you have more longer, a little bit more gradual climbs. But I think overall, it's almost identical. So it's kind of like doing the same training on a different bike, but with a different mindset.
Right. And you mentioned even 4 hour rides. Your race is an hour.
Yeah.
So even for an hour-long race, you guys are out there. Is it so much just that you want to enjoy the trails of the high country and be out there for 4 hours? Or do you really say, I really do need to be on the bike for 4 times longer than my event?
Well, I just enjoy those long rides for
Right.
sure, and so that's one of the biggest reasons I do them. But definitely, it's all about that miles and time spent pedaling, especially early pre-race season. Once you get more into the late racer season, when you're all those hours really wouldn't make you any faster for a single race.
Right.
But having all that good base and long pedaling time and just miles is always good. And so if you enjoy it, why not?
There's a mental aspect to it as well, right?
Yeah.
You're out there, especially obviously Durango, such an incredible place to ride with all the trails you have. So, in terms of like handling, so obviously there's a lot of technical side to cross racing. You've got off camber turns. You obviously have mounts and dismounts. Do you feel that time on the mountain bike helps you there as well?
I think overall in the preseason, yes, because if you try to just do skills on your cross bike starting really early, you'll get just mentally fatigued. You'll burn your matches, and it's like there's that much time you can spend like doing dismounts for like half a year. It's like, so you do like mountain bike skills and you work that up, and then when cyclocross season started, like these days right now where the actual racing season, the important racing season started, then you want to start switching over and be a little bit more focused. But beforehand, they do transfer over, and that's why kind of like you combine them. You do mostly mountain biking, maybe one day of cross a week, and then you switch over.
How quickly do the skills of mounting and remounting and clearing barriers, how quickly does that come back for someone like you? You've been doing this for,
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 years.
It basically comes back instantly for me. Like I never really have to think about it. I'll go out and do a day of it just to make sure I know how to do it before the races, and like I try to make it a weekly routine to make sure I do that practice. But yeah, it doesn't take a whole lot of time after. It's like riding a bike. After you can do it and you got that skill, like just repeating it. There's definitely times like even when I'm mid-season and I've been practicing it over and over again, like I'll run into a barrier and wreck myself just because who knows what went wrong, just making small mistakes. But it's definitely after you've learned it. Hopefully you'll be able to get it back.
I'd say one note about it is I'm the same way with him, but one note about it is I coach a few masters athletes. And even if they have the skill of dismounting, running upstairs, and all that kind of stuff pretty much dialed, then you still want to start earlier with them to kind of like prevent injuries, especially with running.
Yeah.
So you need to get them used to the impact on their legs and hopping and doing plyometrics, kind of like build into it. Because with younger people, it's easier for them to like switch from mountain biking to cross and just do everything kind of like mixed together. With masters athletes, you need to kind of like get them like, start with 15-minute runs like twice a week, and then do some gym work, yes.
So what does a weekly schedule for you guys look like? Because another thing about cyclocross, specifically here in Colorado, is you can race every Saturday and Sunday for 3 or 4 months in a row, and you can really just drill yourself into the ground if you want to. So how do you guys determine a weekly schedule? Because obviously you're not going to have a whole lot of training time in between the races, but it's a long season, so you're trying to also keep fit. What does it look like for you, and does it change throughout the season?
It does, definitely. It definitely changes throughout the season. I'd say for the most part, when you look at it, I would kind of like divide it into 3 phases. For the most part, where the first phase is kind of like when you don't have any races, you take the stress off of racing off of yourself, and you do what Skylar mentioned, the preseason miles, and you kind of just work yourself to be kind of like an aerobic animal. You work kind of like all the metabolic pathways to become an aerobic athlete.
So by aerobic, you actually a fairly limited level of exertion. You should be able to,
Yes.
to talk
Yeah.
freely, like level
Yes.
2, right?
Right.
And you basically work, on the general, you can say heart rate between 70 to 85% of your max heart rate predicted. So it's kind of like just working like what's called aerobic pathways. And then when the season kind of starts, you want to start switching and do more intensity stuff where it's still aerobic but it's more intensity. Obviously start putting more longer sprints into it. And then when you're actually in the racing season, you want to focus on kind of like fine tuning, doing the high intensity stuff, the kind of like over the threshold, the really long sprints. They're really kind of like anaerobic sprints, and then the anaerobic sprints that you repeat again and again and again, where you actually need to do it over like 20 minutes.
Which is very specific to a race where you're having to deal with surges and corners
Right.
and coming out of
Yes.
sand pits and all that sort
And
of
I
stuff.
also change it back and forth throughout the season where, I would have like during the racing season where you start feeling like your aerobic or endurance kind of like tapering off because you travel a lot and you race a lot. So you kind of like you take some time off and then you go back and do a few like days or even a week or two of kind of like base miles again, even if it's in the middle of the racing season. Sometimes it helps mentally as well because just kind of like refresh your mind from the always intensity.
Cross is hard enough mentally to go out there in like 30-degree weather and suffer for an hour. So that break
30 degrees is good. Yeah.
So what about like for say you're right in the middle of the season, you're right in the heart of it, and you're doing 3 weekends of racing. What are you doing Monday through Friday?
Monday through Friday, especially like like in between 2 race weekends, especially if they're like big race weekends where you want to perform well on both weekends. I tend to have a little easier week. Monday, I pretty much always take off just because skills, simple skills for sure. It's always good. And then Tuesday is like always a really hard day for me. Like that's just when I always feel good to go out and go hard again. So I ended up usually putting a lot of hours on too. So I do like a fair amount of base and then like end it with like a ride like Tuesday Night Worlds or have just like a simulated cross race or something like that is really good. And then Wednesday I usually do something similar because it's all about those two events right in a row that you have to perform at. So like I like doing that and doing the Tuesday hard, Wednesday hard. And then Thursday is another recovery skills day, but definitely on the bike again just to get the spin in. And then Friday is openers, but no big hours, just letting your legs breathe again and getting ready for the Saturday effort again.
Somewhat similar for you?
Yeah, I'd say I'm a little bit different with that depending on how recovered I feel from the past week. And I'd say if I feel that I really need lots of recovery, then Monday would be totally off once again. Tuesday would be a long, easy ride, probably like 2 to 3 hours, easy, not even base pace. Finishing up with stretching, foam roller, just making sure like I have a long, easy day. Wednesday would be a cross practice, just cross race simulation, anywhere kind of like in between 20 to 40 minutes, just going hard, doing good warm up, 20, 40 minutes, really hard simulation. Thursday would be another easy day, shorter, but another easy day, probably maybe skills, and then Friday openers and travel to a race.
So traveling to races, are you guys flying a lot? Are you guys in the car a lot? And how do you deal with the dead legs that can come with that?
Compression tights. I'm already wearing them from the long
Dress to
drive.
compress.
Yeah,
Okay.
compression tight works.
Are you guys able to? Do you guys ever get to drive the Boo bus? I mean, is that you get given as a Boo athlete? Do you just have keys to that thing?
No. We definitely that's like our hub at every event. But
that's the festival.
Yeah, that's the rolling festival. But pretty much we drive. We'll end up driving my car if it's within reach of a drive. But it looks like we're getting ready to get into our flying season here, where we're gonna pretty much be flying every weekend, going to Gateway Cup is next, and then he's going to Cincy, but I won't be making it there. And then Louisville, and then Jingle Cross. And
Jingle
so
Cross.
4 big weekends in a row for him, and then I'll have 1 weekend off in there, luckily.
So you're pretty good at packing the bike, I'm assuming?
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
We're lucky because Boo
This is
Bikes
excellent.
will have all our bikes in the Boo Bus. So I'm flying like a tourist, you know?
Yeah.
So you just carry on and
Yep.
they take all your
Just
stuff
carry
and
on.
your bike gets delivered
Just
by
my
bus.
toothpaste and that's it.
Yep.
Wow.
And some clothes.
Toothpaste.
And some clothes.
Yeah, that too.
They don't travel, they don't bring that for you?
No, not that one.
We should make them.
Yeah, we
Wash them
should.
as well.
Wash 'em.
our dirty
Yeah.
sham. Yes.
Just
I'm
leave
sure
your
they're gonna
race
like
bag.
us.
You might be pushing it a little bit too far there. You guys, so Boo bikes, they're made of bamboo.
Right.
So
Isn't that cool?
yeah, it's pretty
Nice.
impressive. So obviously you guys have ridden aluminum before and carbon and whatnot. So what is, I've never ridden a bike that's made of bamboo. So what would I feel differently from my standard carbon bike?
First thing I've noticed, my first ride on the bike, the first thing I noticed is the bamboo just absorbs vibration that much better. And it's so important in cross bikes, obviously in road bikes as well, but cross bikes, since you have no suspension and you have so many bumps, it is critical. You know, I wouldn't say it equals like having a fork of like 80 millimeters, but it definitely helps. That's the first thing I've noticed, and the bike is light, like any other full carbon frame, and you know the geometry, which is pretty cool. They really build our own bikes, like really fit to us. So I could give them, you know, it's kind of like, it feels like a family company where you actually, you know, this is kind of like what I feel like, this is what I want. Then, you know, they send all those emails to their factory up in Vietnam and they make the bikes and it just feels good. So I would say the major difference is just the absorbance of vibrations on the bike.
And I'm assuming you guys have cross, mountain, and road bikes from Boo. Like your whole quiver is just bamboo bikes now.
No, we just got cross bikes for now.
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah, for now. And then
That's
I
the
would
next
I would
step.
definitely agree with the whole vibrations and just like massive shock. Like when you hit something hard, like it races.
barrier?
Yeah, it feels like like a barrier when you run into those or stairs or you know
Whatever.
fans.
We don't need to run them. We just like plow through
Yeah.
them.
So can I just like now ride upstairs on a bamboo bike now, or is it that plush?
You
Not
can
quite,
Float.
not quite.
You can float.
Okay.
If there's a flood, you can float. You'll be
You'll
safe.
float. You'll be good on
I heard
that.
there's lots of flooding out here.
Yeah,
Unfortunately,
right?
so yeah.
We're ready for that.
Just so hold on to bamboo bike.
But I mean, still, you have all the latest technology on the bike. I mean, that's I think what's cool is you have this organic frame, but you're still running, you know, SRAM 22 on it, and you've got disc brakes, so you're not losing anything there.
Well,
So
that
it's-
was a big key that Nick wanted to do. He wanted to make the bike like comparable to the bikes we're going to be racing to next on the line. Like he doesn't want to like have the bamboo bike and then be like, oh, it's just a bamboo. He's like, no, it's the whole bike, and and we're going to make them the best that we can because we want to be racing on the best bikes possible.
No, I'd say one additional difference between buying a really expensive carbon frame and buying a bamboo bike is the bamboo. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but as far as I know, I mean, the fibers run straight compared to carbon where you weave it. And the problem with carbon frame is if you hit the frame and you break the weaving of the fibers, then pretty much the whole strength of the structure kind of like compromises. With bamboo, you can pretty much, even if you drill a hole, like there are enough fibers to go straight, they're going to hold the structure. So the bike is still going to be pretty darn strong compared to a carbon fiber frame, where if you knock the frame out, it's just you can either throw it or you have to fix it.
Yeah.
So have you started drilling holes in the frame to save weight?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the next obvious question, right? Like, let's go back to the 70s. Start drilling.
You're a
stuff to save
racer,
weight.
aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
You're a weight weenie?
Well, I'm not sort of a weight weenie, but I'll save weight when I can. I don't know about drilling into my bike, but
But if it's
I'll try.
bamboo,
If it's bamboo, I might.
it's possible. Wouldn't recommend it, but it's possible.
I'm assuming that would void my warranty.
It might a little bit.
Maybe.
I can't hide that. So speaking of the technology on the bikes, now, Rotem, you've started working, riding with a power meter, and you just started last week, correct? Your first.
I've worked with Power Meter for the last 2 years, but just training on the road with it.
Okay.
Last week, we've got a hold of a power tap wheel with a disc rotor and also a tubular cross tire on it. So we've been able to actually run it last weekend at the Boulder Cup on Sunday's race, and we've looked through the power file a little bit, and it's as crazy as you think it would be.
Yeah, it's all up and down. You're either on it or you're not.
Yeah, it looks like shark's teeth, basically, just going up and down.
So how do you think you're going to be able to weave that into your training moving forward?
Just realizing, looking at the power file, just realizing the amount of surges.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I would expect it would be high, but I realized it's in the hundreds of surges in 1 hour race. So it really needs to change how I train intensity. It should be more, you can't be stable in your efforts. When you want to be specific to cross fitness, you need to be in the state of mind of you're going hard by always surging and recovering from it, not recovering fully and surging again and again and again. And that's kind of like the simulations or training I should do.
So you're either threshold or above.
Yes.
And that's kind of where you looked at that and you see, okay, this is where I need to train. So how much fun is that sort of training?
Next question.
Yeah.
Next question.
Do you try to do anything specific within that training for cross, or are you trying to do maybe like low speed stuff? You're coming out of a corner and you've got to really put the power down.
Yeah.
Have you gotten that specific?
Reaccelerate.
Yeah.
Definitely the reacceleration is a big part of it. And just when I'm doing my sprints, I'll go out on grass and go full sprint and out off the grass, so you don't ever get up to that high speeds, and then just slam on the brakes even though I'm going straight line, and then reaccelerate again, just back up.
I think on those kind of practices where you're getting more and more specific, race simulations are the best. The best training you can do is actually race. And you need to be careful with that because you need to be in the right mindset. Because if you're not there to actually fight for it, for every corner, for taking every spot, then you probably should not do that training because it's so specific and it's so hard that maybe you should do a moderate intensity for the meantime, or take a recovery until you're ready to do that intensity. So, the Wednesdays practice we have in Durango, that serves it very well. I mean, we have a Cyclocross course that we change every week, and it's always new. So you just come over there, you learn the course really quickly. You do 1 or 2 laps on it just to kind of see it out, and then everybody starts together. We do a half an hour in it. Racing simulation is pretty much as specific as it gets. I'd say if you train differently, then
you should have different race goals.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You should kind of it's either you're doing a race-specific race simulation or you're training your limiters. If you're feeling your aerobic end is not really there, then you're gonna do a 3-hour ride with a 1 hour tempo on it, pretty steady. It's not specific cross, but it's working your limiters.
Sure. So do you guys practice hand-ups?
I've only been disqualified for hand-ups, so I don't tend to. I tend to not do that.
Because that's again part of the atmosphere is bacon hand-ups, and I've seen all sorts of dollar bill hand-ups and all that. But I think that's what you were talking about earlier. Is that definitely brings in the festival atmosphere. But that's not something you guys train for specifically, one-handed, left and right-handed.
Practice choking down a piece of bacon or a beer.
I don't do bacon, but
no bacon.
No bacon for me. No.
What would it take for you to get a hand up? What would you grab for? $20 bill? Beer?
Beer, yeah, I've done that. We have the Iron Horse Bicycle Classic in Durango where the mountain bike race goes through Steamworks, which is a brewery in Durango, and obviously you have to grab a beer every lap or 2 beers.
if you're that good.
That's, as I say, that's very impressive. 2 in one hand? How do you?
No, you take one and the bar is long enough that you take one and you slow down for it and you grab the other one.
True professional. I'm impressed. Well, you guys have a great weekend of racing ahead of you. You're going to Boo's hometown, Fort Collins, and Saturday, Sunday is going to be awesome. The Boo bus is going to be out there demoing bikes as well, so anyone can try the real feel of Bamboo. So good luck.
You can cheer us with Boo. Just scream Boo at us.
Yeah.
It's also a good
Does that
cheer.
ever get old? Oh, I guess it is. No?
No, it doesn't ever get old.
This is the time of year especially for it. Right?
Yeah. Yep, I'll even get the thumb down boos, boo, whole corners.
We even get the boobs.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, people really commit to it, and I've had whole corners of people that are all just doing it because they know how cool it is.
Awesome.
And they like to boo people, especially when they're booing for a good reason.
Sure. Well, yeah, thanks again for stopping by the Training Peaks headquarters, and good luck on Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you out there.